All right, so looking at worksheet 2, going over some of these. Answers are posted, but 16. Yeah, that looks terrible. Okay, there's kind of two approaches to 16, and either one will get you there. I'm going to go the way that gets you there quicker. The long way would be to multiply out, so you get 2x minus 6, and then FOIL that, distribute a negative 4, collect all the like terms, and go that way. That's an okay way. It's just kind of the long way. What I would rather do instead is say, wait a minute, they both have an x minus 3. Both of those terms have an x minus 3 in them. So I can factor out one of the x minus 3's. So I'm going to take out x minus 3. Now what does that leave from this first term? A 2. And then what does it leave for the second term? 4. Yeah, there were 2 of them, and we took one of them, so there's still one of them left. And then we need to clean up the inside here. 2 minus 4x plus 12. So negative 4x plus 14. And then x minus 3. And my guess would be the answer key probably took a 2 out of this. Maybe even a negative 2 out of that. It did not? Okay. So if you, probably because they did it this way, if you multiplied it all out, there'd be a greatest common factor of 2, and you could take that out. So this would be okay, but you could also take out a 2 or a negative 2 from this if you wanted to. What else? 17. Let's see. Did you recognize what was going on in 17? Both of those are cubes. So I can do the difference of cube thing. Same, opposite, always positive. That tells me the signs. Same, opposite, always positive. Same as the original, and then opposite of the original, and always positive. Take the cube root of the pieces to get started. 2. And then what's the cube root of 27x cubed?
Negative 3x.
Yeah. Yeah, either one. The minus sign stays there. 3x. And then my 3 blanks are square the first one, multiply the 2 together, square the second one. So 4, 6x. Don't worry about the negative sign, because the SOAP tells me the sign. So yeah, it's negative 3x times 2, but don't worry about that. The O of SOAP tells me what sign to use. And then square 3x. Make sure you square 3x, 9x squared. Again, the danger is some people will square the 3 but not the x, or square the x but not the 3.
So that looks like the way
it always, maybe not always, it usually looks like that second piece could be factored. Like, oh, what can I do with that? But if it's a SOAP problem, the second piece can't ever be factored. So don't spend any time trying to figure out what multiplies to 36 and adds to 6. It won't work. So don't waste your time doing it on a SOAP problem. Ty?
So how do you know what way to do which problem?
Okay, that is a great question. How do you know which way to do which problem? You have to recognize what's there, and the only way to do that is to have done some. But to also know the squares in the cube. So if you see x cubed minus 64, well, the cube is a bit of a tip-off. 64 is 4 cubed. So that tells us how to do that one. 18, both of those are perfect cubes. Anything with 4 terms is grouping. So 11 and 12, those are grouping questions. I don't. It's a good question. How do you know what to do? And the answer would be a lot of practice and knowing your squares and cubes, so that you can recognize when those show up. So we didn't do that the other day, but 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 8, 3 squared is 27. So there's our cubes. So that's part of it, is to know your cubes so that you recognize them. Know the squares as well, but those are a little bit easier. You're more familiar with those, so you recognize them a little bit quicker. And in fact, on this next test, there are a few people every year who write these down at the top of, they hit the little factoring section on the test. They'll write all of that stuff down just so that they'll kind of have those numbers in their head, so that if you hit a 64, your brain should be thinking, wait a minute, this could be a cube problem. 64 is tricky because it could also be a squared problem. But if you see 27 or 8 or 125, hopefully those numbers are familiar enough to you that you recognize, wait a minute, something's going on. It's probably a cube. Ty, I feel like that was an incomplete answer to your question. You do too, I guess. Practice is the short answer. Know your cubes and squares. I mean, there are some rules, like 4 terms is always grouping. 2 terms is always going to be squareds or cubes, like number 8 and 9. Always look for a GCF first. Any others? Some of you are working them right now. Going once. Going twice.
All of them?
All of them. They're all posted, so there's your answer to all of them.
Shoot, I got 721. That's a big number.
Last chance, anything? Yes, sir. Number 6. Fractions. Ugh. Squared, so I'm worried about that or thinking about that, but always first is look for a GCF.
That's the 3.
So fractions are kind of tricky, but you can handle the top and the bottom separately because that's how you multiply fractions. You multiply the top, multiply the bottom. So yeah, both of them have a 3 in the bottom, so I'm going to factor out a 3 denominator. What about from the top? What about the 2 and the 8? What can I factor out of a 2 and an 8? A 2. So let's figure out what's left. 2/3 times what would get me 2/3 x squared? That's kind of an easy one. We took the whole coefficient off of it.
And then 4/3.
The next one takes a little bit of thought here. It's not 4/3 because of how you multiply fractions.
I'm slow.
So let's just go piece by piece. 2 times what would get me to 8? 4. 3 times what would get me to 3? 1. And then we realize I didn't really need to write 4/1, but it's not wrong. Oh, there's more to go on this one because we recognize a difference of squareds. So 2/3 out front. X plus 2, x minus 2. There's actually a problem on today's assignment where you have to recognize it in the other directions. When you see x plus and x minus, you kind of have to know how it goes in reverse. Jason.
For completely forgot.
You sure? Was it related to number 6 or was it a generic question?
I think it was related, but I don't know.
Man, I feel like you were on the verge of a good question there. Just by your thought process. Anything else?
Can you go to 2?
Number 2, and then we'll move on.
I'm just dumb.
You're not dumb. You may not be looking at the right thing. Did you try something first?
You gotta take out the x.
Okay, take out the x. And what did that leave you with?
Oh, never mind. I have to figure it out.
81 minus x squared. And this one looks a little bit weird maybe because usually the x squared is first, but it still works the same way.
And then
9 plus x and 9 minus x.
you just do 18. That's just
18 is a lot like 17, so I'm going to not do 18. How about that?